Latest, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. Everybody is getting so tired with the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, who's saying that from Europe to everywhere. It's like he's taking over. These are the people that are preaching democracy to the world, and they are making sure that everybody practices democracy. So everybody is expecting that the United States of America leaders will be the perfect example of democracy. But it has turned out that Donald Trump is doing exactly the opposite. And we've seen world leaders criticizing Donald Trump, and the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, has also joined in this call. According to him, what Donald Trump is doing is not good. And he's trying to remain relevant when we know very well that the United States of America empire has collapsed. And people are saying that whenever you see leaders do this, it means the empire has totally collapsed. And they are just doing everything possible to continue to remain relevant. He spoke about this during the World Economic Forum 2026 in Davos. He warned of a global instability, economic weaponization, and strategic risks for middle power. He's calling also on people to unite against this kind of oppression. And we should all fight for our integrity, our sovereignty, and we should live in a world of realism. Because other people, like he's saying, are living in a world that is fictional.
It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. So what are our options? In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question: how did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with a greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window: "Workers of the world unite." He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, when the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack. Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down. For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful, and American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals. And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, the architecture, the very architecture of collective problem solving are under threat. And as a result, many countries are drawing the same conclusions, that they must develop greater strategic autonomy in energy, food, critical minerals, in finance and supply chains. And this impulse is understandable. A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let's be clear-eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable. And there's another truth. If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and interests, the gains from transactionalism will become harder to replicate. Hegemons cannot continually monetize their relationships. Allies will diversify to hedge against uncertainty. They'll buy insurance, increase options in order to rebuild sovereignty. Sovereignty that was once grounded in rules but will increasingly be anchored in the ability to withstand pressure. This room knows this is classic risk management. Risk management comes at a price. But that cost of strategic autonomy, of sovereignty, can also be shared. Collective investments in resilience are cheaper than everyone building their own fortresses. Shared standards reduce fragmentations. Complementarities are positive sum. And the question for middle powers like Canada is not whether to adapt to the new reality. We must. The question is whether we adapt by simply building higher walls or whether we can do something more ambitious. Now, Canada was amongst the first to hear the wake-up call, leading us to fundamentally shift our strategic posture. Canadians know that our old, comfortable assumptions that our geography and alliance memberships automatically conferred prosperity and security, that assumption is no longer valid. And our new approach rests on what Alexander Stubb, the President of Finland, has termed value-based realism. Or to put another way, we aim to be both principled and pragmatic. Principled in our commitment to fundamental values, sovereignty, territorial integrity, the prohibition of the use of force except when consistent with the UN Charter, and respect for human rights. And pragmatic in recognizing that progress is often incremental, that interests diverge, that not every partner will share all of our values. So we're engaging broadly, strategically, with open eyes. We actively take on the world as it is, not wait around for a world we wish to be. We are calibrating our relationships so their depth reflects our values. And we're prioritizing broad engagement to maximize our influence, given the fluidity of the world at the moment, the risks that this poses, and the stakes for what comes next. And we are no longer just relying on the strength of our values, but also the value of our strength. We are building that strength at home.
This is the perfect time that all Africans must unite. And we must also follow the world, because We are seeing these things happening far away, which we know we are part. Things are turning around anyhow. And if Europeans are facing this from the United States of America, I wonder what you, the African, will do. When it comes to Africa, we are so divided to the point that we don't even think about ourselves. That is the time you see us giving ourselves out to be used against our own brother. So we need, as Africans, to see what is happening around us, and this should also help us to reunite, because the world is not waiting for you and I. They are moving, and we must move alongside. And that is the reason to which are all in all the saviors, the protectors, the unifiers in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are doing everything possible to unite themselves and build themselves. If we don't unite to fight, it will be very difficult for us to be able to live. If they can go to any length to be demanding things in European Union, in EU, want to control EU, what will become of us in Africa? This is the time for us to resist oppression in its form of whatever. This is not a time for us in Africa to start following the world and portraying ourselves as if we have nothing, when we know very well that these people are getting their power from Africa. This is the time African Union must stop talking and act more, because the talking, we know what to do in speech. We just need African Union to move away from speech into action, because what is happening in the world, every world leader is calling for action. And we are seeing that EU, they are not just talking. They have plan A and B to use against Donald Trump. And that is why they are saying that if you do this, we are going to cut you off. But we can never have Africa that will speak with that voice. Because when this man came to Nigeria and tested whatever, we know our leaders knew very well that it wasn't because of this Christian genocide, but they used that as an excuse to test whatever they want to do in Africa. And African Union was so silent. See how EU is quick in acting, coming together, calling themselves out to make sure that they fight against Trump. But if it is Africa, that is the time we are now watching, and we will even see it to be an opportunity for us to even use ourselves against our brothers. The times that we are in is so difficult. And they said when an empire is falling or collapsing, it is very dangerous because they go to any length to do anything at all. And we mustn't sit for things to become worse before we will not be looking for what next to do. The only thing that can save us in Africa is by us uniting. This is the time we Africans must see beyond the colonial borders that were kept in place. We must unite to fight for our sovereignty, to fight for our liberation, to fight for our dignity. It is not about giving our speech, because we have had enough of the speeches from our leaders. The world is not based on speech. Trump is doing everything with actions. And these are the things we want African leaders to be doing. See what is happening in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. They don't talk. We hardly hear them talk. All we see is action. So we want our leaders to back their speech with actions. So together we can set ourselves free. If not, nobody knows the fate of the African. If Trump decides to turn his attention, and I know from Europe, Africa will be next. And with us, nobody knows, because it will just be come and take and I'll have peace. Come and take and I'll have peace. And at the end of the day, we, the ordinary ones, will suffer. We need to come together and fight for our total liberation. And this is the time. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall. And united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world and in Canada.